So I got this problem with the computer. Yeah, I'm ready for the show. I click enter studio, and the computer freezes up. It's about the third time it's done it in the last month.
Well, the last couple of days I've had to refresh my Facebook page. In fact, a couple of days ago I had to restart too because or retry because I can't get messages to show up. They just kind of wave away at me, and then even this morning I had to refresh my Facebook page so that I could go to Messenger.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome.
We got to find some kind of conspiracy theory that fits all this, but I haven't thought of one yet.
Yeah, it's called Trashy Old Computer, Dave.
Well, we've got a story about Meta and Meta and how they're working with.
I don't think we can blame this one. I don't think we can blame this one on Meta.
I think they'll find a way.
I'm sure you will. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning with me, Peter Giblett, and him, Dave Wheeler. Right. So it's Tuesday, the 27th of August. There we go.
I know now what the Great Reset is. That means we have to keep resetting our Facebook page and retrying to get on.
Yeah. Yeah. Great reset indeed. All right. Okay. So Ottawa is going to be cutting the number of temporary foreign workers. This seems
Seriously.
This seems to be in relation to the issues that have been announced over the last few weeks. And, well, I'm just wondering, is it, where's this going?
Well, Ottawa played right into the hands of those companies that would abuse foreign workers or abuse the legislation that let more foreign workers come into the country when we had worker shortages. That is, they just walked into that, not realizing, and I don't know why, that of course foreign workers would then be preferred over local workers.
Yeah.
When Trudeau went on TV and he announced this, that he's going to back off on temporary workers by quite a bit, he sounded like Poilievre, actually. He sounded as if he was doing a Poilievre type analysis or what Poilievre would have done, he's doing. He's beginning to sound. He's beginning to change his style. Instead of being vigorously, idealistically, sort of
he's
with a halo on type of pronouncements. He's now sounded just like a practical politician, which the Future Party the new Future Party has asked for. So Mr. Trudeau is a very good actor. He's changed his style quite a bit in his kind of announcements. There's not that jingoism that usually goes with it, the sort of rah kind of thing. It is. I've predicted that here on the show, particularly for our own town, that once the wages get too low for anybody to be able to manage a household, you're going to find the town not being able to supply enough low wage earners to fill the jobs. So that will mean that the employers will then push for temporary foreign workers, which means it will keep the wages down and it will keep a certain segment of the Canadian population unemployed. And unfortunately, in the United States, it's even much worse, where they have a lot of illegals working on farms, working everywhere. And cheap labor. When you start to shift back, what is the advantage to the wealthy? Is cheap labor, and cheap labor shift all the way back to slavery, because Canada's temporary work program was called sort of a modern slavery by the UN, a huge overstatement, but nevertheless, it was a complaint that our temporary workers were more like modern day slavery, which was, like I said, a huge overstatement. But if this keeps going on, you're going to shift back to that point.
Yeah.
The United States and Canada and every industrial country and first world country wants to utilize cheap labor. It wants to bring in temporary workers to work at very low wages.
If you're honest about it, you know, when you think about it, the part of the equations of capitalism, the cost of employment is a key factor in whether you can continue business or not, right?
That's right. And Trudeau took another page out of Poilievre's book, and he says, if it's time to invest in Canadian workers, quit using not illegals, but temporary workers, and it's time to start investing in Canadians for your workforce. Well, if I've got a restaurant, and this is happening in restaurants, like, you know, usually you get somebody from locally that work in the restaurant, maybe new immigrants or something like that, and they're guaranteed a certain wage. Maybe they'll get some tips. Maybe they're working in the kitchen as a cook, whatever. But what's happening now is we're getting temporary workers in those positions. That cuts out and the Canadian unemployment rates keeps going up. So this means that an employer can pay quite a bit less, doesn't have to worry about CPP, doesn't have to worry about a number of other different things. And when he doesn't need the worker anymore, he can just dump them, and that worker, you know, goes back home. Probably not. Probably try to stay in Canada somehow. But it was a bad move, and it was supposed to be fill jobs that we couldn't fill temporarily. But what's happened is they're taking jobs away from Canadians in real, this time for real. It's not an accusation that it has no bones. It is for real. Temporary foreign workers are taking jobs from Canada. It's not them, though. It's the employer that are employing them.
It's one thing having them come in, do summer work on farms and things like that. And even there, arguably, we should have local workforce doing it. But it's quite another thing to have them filling jobs in McDonald's and that, you know, and any other, you know, and factories and the like.
Well, even here, our temporary foreign workers are better taken care of on the farms than they are in the United States, whereas quite often illegals working in the farms. We get, and this goes for Democrat and Republican-owned farms, by the way. And you will find that in the United States, people's political careers have been ruined because they've had illegals, foreigners working in their household, cleaning their homes or whatever else for pittance wages. When you do that, you cut off, when you get a bunch of let's say you get a bunch of new immigrants into the country, and usually they, and some of them establish themselves or begin at the low wage part of the strata. If you cut that off for them by bringing in temporary workers, it disrupts everything. But it stops the ability of somebody to start at the bottom and move to the top, kind of thing.
Yeah. And the whole point is whether they're working at McDonald's, whether they're working in hotels or working in a factory, temporary foreign workers are taking somebody's jobs. And if those jobs are on, if nobody's taking those jobs because they're on lower wages, you know, perhaps the argument is there that the wages need to be put up.
Exactly. The whole thing of illegals coming into the United States and being utilized in work so vastly that is an argument of that they cut off the natural development of economic development of the Black community down there. Now, normally every successive wave of new immigrants comes in, fills that lower end job thing, and then those jobs, and then build themselves up. Italians, Jews, Lithuanians, you name it. Anyone who comes into the country begins, trying to establish themselves, and they take on the lower end paying jobs, and they eventually move themselves up like that. That was cut. The Blacks were cut off from doing that. Every new successive wave of immigrant came in and shut them out of the work. As a matter of fact, the Irish undercut the Black workforce in New York City in order to cut them out of the economy, basically, and replace them in New York City and back in the 1800s.
Dave,
and that has happened. That has happened here in the United States with Mexican and other illegals coming in, where normally the Blacks have never had that ability to be recognized as a sort of like what immigrants were used at, as a pool of new low wages, and they were never able to enter the economy because they were blocked by other people coming in. And now it's in the last century or so, it's been illegals from Central America and South America. And
but Dave, we're talking about Canadian business here and the Canadian problems right now.
Yeah, I know, but I'm giving you an analysis of how this can really affect an economy. If you shut out members of your own society, who would normally take the low pay wage jobs, then you stop them from being able to evolve, and
I get that.
Move up the economic ladder.
But again, the whole point is that something needs to be done about this situation. And as I said, it's one thing having temporary foreign workers in the farms. It's quite a different thing to have them in a lot of other jobs.
Well, one of the reasons why we have temporary foreign workers on our farms, we didn't have that before. We actually had Canadians working on those farms, residents of Canada. And the reason why we are is because other farm producers in the United States that export their goods to Canada use cheap labor, illegals or whatever else, and we had to sort of compete that way, because no Canadian is going to work on a farm for those kind of wages. But in the United States or our other competitors, if they paid a fair wage to everybody, their food prices would go up, but you would have residents working on the farms rather than imported labor.
Yeah. Well, it's a problem. It's a problem whichever way you look at it, right? And it's the whole question about illegals working on farms in the US. Sure, it has an effect upon our farm laborers here, but again, it's something that we need to figure this problem out.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that the temporary worker program is very good for certain sectors of the economy, agricultural. This also helps developing countries send workers here and bring money back home. And that's the big thing. But a lot of these temporary workers they're bringing in, I'm not so sure if they're sending money home because it takes everything they make in order to live. And Mike Cushman adds, according to public data from Immigration, according to Refugees and Citizenship Canada, 183,820 temporary foreign worker permits became active in 2023. Yeah, and this is up from
the
new ones. we
And
are
this is
over
up
that
from
200,000.
98,000. And Dave, this is up from 98,000 in 2019, right? An 88% increase.
According to the one of the articles I read, it's now well over 200,000.
Yeah. Well, that's possible.
And our listener, Karen Fraser, says, good morning. Good morning to you. And Karen Fraser also says, Trudeau is trying to get ahead of the scathing reports on temporary workers from the UN and our Senate.
Yeah. And those scathing reports, the scathing reports about them being virtually slaves, I think we probably all agree that there's little evidence that is the case. But the point being is that it's clear that temporary foreign workers are taking jobs from Canadians.
That's right. And whoever wrote that UN report shot themselves in the foot, because their recommendation was to allow these people, these temporary foreign workers who are treated as slaves, which is a huge overstatement, allow them a vehicle as into citizenship to Canada. Now, he just shot himself in the foot, because in order to address the issue, we're going to cut back the number of temporary workers, which I don't think whoever wrote that UN article intended. He or she intended that the temporary Canadian workers. Oh, we got an emergency alert.
That's what I just went off on my phone. I just killed it because I hate those ones at this time in the morning.
Yeah, I don't get too many of them, really. We usually get lots of them.
What bothers me about them is that you find it's somebody from North Bay or something like that, some long distance away, but it's like it's got nothing to do with Niagara, and you're not even traveling in that direction. You certainly couldn't identify an orange car on the road coming out of North Bay.
Yeah. Well,
they need to be more localized. Not
I suppose so. Yeah. They've improved upon it, because my phone used to go off like a couple times a day. Now, now maybe one or two times a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, the federal government matches US tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles, and Beijing is warning of retaliation.
There's a couple of things here. The United States sort of rang up Canada. The United States, of course, increased the tariffs on Chinese vehicles by 100%. And then I don't know why Canada didn't do the same thing like automatically. So they got on the phone and they phoned Canada and said pretty much, you should do the same thing. Pretty much like you better do the same thing, kind of thing. And I don't know why Canada couldn't come up with that idea on their own. Why did they have to have a telephone call from the United States?
What gets me about this is that I'm generally opposed to implementing tariffs like this, but in general situation about Chinese don't care about how much it costs to actually make a vehicle. They'll sell a vehicle at a loss, because a loss or a profit doesn't matter to them. It's about market share, and that's purely and simply what they're going for. And that's the reason, of course, they're trying to put cheap electric vehicles on our market, because they're trying to flood our market with cheap electric vehicles. And one of the questions about always things about cheap Chinese stuff, I always call it cheap Chinese tat. Well, do I really want to be troubled by somebody driving a cheap Chinese electric vehicle? Is it going to break? If they're around me, are they going to break down in 2 miles or what?
No, these are very good, well-built cars. That's the biggest problem with them. And they're not going to flood the market and take, in this particular case, and take a loss. They're not going to do that. What this is unfair Chinese trade practices. They can put a workforce together, whip them for 12 hours a day, two shifts, 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day. Pay them.
That's part of the problem.
Pay them small amounts of wages, not compensate their employees like we do well enough. And they have subsidized power, and they have subsidized steel, and they have subsidized aluminum, and they have other subsidized. So it's a completely unfair practice. That's why you have tariffs like this when that kind of thing happens. We find this in minor ways between Canada and the United States when we talk about the free trade. And someone's always saying, well, your government subsidizes your industry and this and that. And there should be conditions put on this product or that product because of it.
Certainly Chinese, not the same way. Yeah, but we don't subsidize in the same way as they do in China.
No, it's all subsidies, all government run. It's all protected. Yeah. It all has preferred electrical power. It has preferred steel production and all of that, with the idea of unifying all their services under one. So they don't have an independent steel company that says they're going to, 2 or 3 of them, they're going to sell. No, the government says you're going to make steel and you're going to make it for this price, and you're going to make a battery and you're going to make it for this price. Too bad. And here's a bag of rice for your workers to eat. Make sure they work 12 hours a day. And that's the kind of unfair practice we find in China. And it's also their yuan will not be floated in as a currency too. That's another factor. There are a lot of problems with Chinese trade. Now we opened our markets to the Chinese years ago and kind of looked the other way. We started back in the 90s because it was thought if China was to become part of the community of nations, the community of capitalist nations, basically, that it would behave itself and things would happen and everything nice. But what we found was they really didn't change much in the way in which they treated their workers and that kind of thing. And their unfair practices that are continuing. Now the Chinese, when the Americans put the 100% tariff on the Chinese vehicles, the Chinese were rather muted in their complaints about that, but they seem to like to pick on Canada as a surrogate to the United States, basically. So they've complained about this, and they're going to sort of fight back, basically, and they complain vehemently to Ottawa. But I don't remember the same vehemence against the United States. But because Canada is like a kind of a little brother kind of to the United States, it can pick on us. It can pick on us as we saw.
And they've always picked upon they've always picked upon us. Remember the question about the Huawei executive and the two Michaels when they blocked Canadian canola, pork, beef, and other things in that during 2018.
We're a little bit more prepared for that now. We can anticipate things like that happening, so we're a little bit more prepared for it. It was a shock to us at the time. We were just complying with our agreements we've had with the United States, and they didn't go after the United States. The United States were the ones that issued the arrest warrant, basically, and because we have an agreement with the United States, we were the ones that actually arrested the executive and held her before we could extradite her to the United States. That was our agreement we have by law with the United States, and they would do the same thing for us.
Was she ever extradited?
China full well knew that, but did not punish the United States for the arrest. They punished Canada.
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to punish Canada because we're a smaller economy.
That's right. We can't fight back. We can't do much damage. And this is a message to the United States too. This is what we can do. It's also a message to any other small economy like Canada of the power of China. what we can do to you, how we can hurt you.
Yeah. And they can't, the thing is, the Chinese know they can't hurt the US.
No, they can't. And the United States can hurt them back. And that's the big problem there. If China tries to hurt the United States just stops buying T-shirts from China.
This is actually, a big issue with any economy that is outmatched by, like, the Chinese. The same would happen with somewhere like Belgium or Kenya, for example. Smaller economies are always going to get hit by people like China.
Sure. I remember a place like Kenya or Tanzania, or like Kenya, I think their ports are being built by the Chinese right now. So are you going to say, hey, you're not using enough of Kenyan labor in the upper, you're only using them for labor. Aren't you going to train them on that machine or that machine? We're going to go on strike, or we're complaining. And then all of a sudden China stops work or does something else. So they have power, and they know it. And they have power over Canada, but they don't have power over the United States. In fact, the United States could just say, if China starts to put tariffs on the United States goods, then the United States should just call a law and say, we're going to shut down all the Walmarts for 1 week. That would disastrously affect the Chinese economy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So then the other question, of course, is that Tesla and other car manufacturers actually have a lot of their cars or parts made in China, don't they?
Yes, of course. It's a global economy. Let's face it. It is a global economy. But Canada not only will put 100% tariff on the EVs, it will also put a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, semiconductors, and other things that are coming from China because of their unfair trade practices and unfair manufacturing processes. You remember when we had a free trade agreement with Mexico, one of the good things that come out, despite the fact that Trump was the guy behind it, one of the good things that came out of the free trade agreement, we insisted that Mexico compensate their workers to $16 an hour. Ours are making much more than that. But the fact of the matter is, Mexico was getting away with unfair trade practices because it was paying its workers so low that it made a difference on the price of the car. So it made it very attractive for car companies to go there because they could always look the other way. As in Mexico's case, they get a bag of beans instead of a bag of rice. But one of the insistences of Canada and the United States was Mexico compensate their workers better so that the car is more competitive in real terms. They, like we do.
Yeah.
Plus, we have an interest here. We have invested incredible money in electric vehicles, particularly in Ontario. We can't have our electric vehicle markets flooded with cheap cheap electric vehicles from workers that make a bag of rice a week instead of a good wage.
And that's exactly what's driving all of this, of course, is that people like Doug Ford have been out opening EV plants and the like around Ontario, and I'm sure that has not, that impact has not been lost on the Conservatives, and certainly not Pierre Poilievre in this regard. And the fact that we've got local interest in electric vehicles, whatever part of the electric vehicle we're talking about, is an important factor in all of this, and that shouldn't be lost upon Trudeau at the end of the day. And that is, of course, why he's suggesting this, why he's doing all of this. right?
Well, he suggested it because he got a phone call from the United States. I'm pretty sure that Canada would have come to that conclusion too, but they are slow and pokey and probably worried about the Chinese reaction. But they got a nice phone call from the Biden administration saying, "Look, we did it. You better do it." And what the news says is, we suggest you do it, or we encourage you to do it the same way we did. Pretty much, though, it was, "What's the matter with you? How come you're not following a line?" I mean, it's in your best interest too.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we have a huge amount of investment in this area. Remember Trudeau, and this is one thing where provinces and the feds have cooperated well. This is one thing that the Liberal government, the federal Liberal government, has really come to done the right thing and helped Ontario invest in these electric vehicles by encouraging the manufacturers to locate here, in which they did. Now we got battery outfits coming here. We've got car companies that are going to, right now they're on delay, as we found out, I think last week or so. GM has got all the stuff ready to be installed so they could meet the
but that's because of
it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and that's because of the current state of the economy, rather than the willingness to actually get the electric vehicle. Current state of the electric vehicle economy, rather than the willingness overall to get electric vehicles moving.
Yeah, it's eventually gonna. That's eventually going to take over for sure. There's a lot of resistance to it, of course. There's the oil lobby resisting it. There's all kinds of other factors in there. But sooner or later, we're going to go to electric vehicles. It kind of makes sense, and it doesn't make sense. Like, if you want to cut out the environmental part of it, it still makes sense, because an electric vehicle is much more efficient than a gas combustion engine. Combustion engine has to have coolants, and it has to have oils and all these other things involved in it. Oil pumps, gas pumps, fuel pumps. With electric car, it's a battery bank and a motor, right?
And a charging port.
And a charging port instead of a gas,
and the good thing, well, actually, I was just going to say, they've opened those charging stations at Morrison and Dorchester now.
Yeah. Now it's going to be a slow transition, probably, into EVs, but it's going to happen. I see more and more of them on the street, even though the market isn't, the economy's bad, the market quite isn't open, and it's a new thing for most people.
But again, let's face it, Dave, how often do you change your car? Once every 10 years?
Yeah, I'm due for one. Yeah, I actually, my car right now, it's 10 years old. 10 years since I bought it.
Yeah. If you were younger, probably you might change it once every 7 or 8 years, 6 or 7, 8 years.
When I was younger, I had to change it more often, because my cars were really old. I could get a couple of years out of them, and then I'd have to buy another clunker, get a couple of years out of that. So once I started making better money, I could buy better cars, and they would last longer.
Yeah. Well, I generally speaking, the average lifetime I have with my car was about 10 years.
But you don't do a whole lot of commuting. Well, you do now, but previously you didn't.
I've always done a lot of commuting. Oh, I've done a lot of commuting.
What's your distances?
Pardon me?
What's your distances?
Oh, I commuted to Glasgow from London.
Whoa, that's quite a ways.
Yeah, but I didn't drive it. I flew.
Yeah. Well, I used to do 100 kilometers every day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
100 kilometers there and 100 kilometers back, 200 a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that. I've done that in the past, definitely have done that in the past. But the thing about it is that, I'm not saying I bought new vehicles, but I bought second-hand vehicles. And typically I've lasted, most of my cars have lasted for 10 years. I've got second user versions, vehicles that were basically 1 or 2 years old.
Yeah. And what you need is a well-built Chinese EV.
No, I don't. I'm perfectly good with what I've got.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is the EV will take over for no other reason than they're a much more efficient use of power.
They are.
This is a bit of the EV showing up on the market now is analogous to the saddle maker looking at a combustion car back in 1900. He can see that there's going to be less mechanics. In his case, the saddle maker sees suddenly there'll be a huge drop in demand for saddles or harnesses or reins or all that other stuff. And that's going to be the one of the sort of reverberations that's going through the economy. You're going to get less mechanics that work on a car, because a mechanic is a very specialized person. He or she has to know, and like 99% of them are he's, has to know cooling systems, have to know electrical systems, have to know combustion systems,
again,
whatever.
That's what you're going to end up with is you're still going to end up with, you're still going to have people who change tires. You're still going to have people who know heating systems, just the different heating system.
Yeah, but look at this. When you talk about a car and you talk about horse and buggy needs reins, and it needs all kinds of other things. It has wheels just like a car has wheels. You see what I mean? But the horse and buggy days are gone, and the wheels, they may have been originally based on horse and buggy wheels, but then you get rubber and all those other kind of things coming into the factor. But
we know there's a changing market, but there'll still be a call for mechanics, different type of skills set, maybe.
A lot less. You see what I mean? I was trying to say that the combustion engine, the car today is a very complicated machine. But an electric vehicle is not. And the electronics in it may be a little bit, but all you do is change out a card if things go bad. You have a motor and you have a battery, and that's your drive system. To have a drive system in a car, you have to have a combustion engine. You have to have explosions going off thousands of times per minute, and you have to have, or hundreds of times per minute, and you have to have a cooling system, and you have to have an electrical system that's driven off of the engine and all that. But if you have a battery system, you've got your source of propulsion is a battery bank and a motor linked up to a drive wheel. That's it.
Yeah, but again, then you still have to have, as I say, heating for the passenger, cooling for the passenger.
Minor things, extremely minor compared to a combustion engine, because all you have to do is have electric heater or air conditioner. You don't have to have it driven off of the combustion engine. You don't have to generate the electric power and then put it into your heater or air conditioner. The amount of mechanics will be reduced a lot. Karen Fraser says, I was told EV batteries can't handle our Canadian North. Not so.
I don't believe that.
There will be different factors involved.
I think you'll find there'll be different batteries for Canada than there will be for the US. For the North.
The batteries right now, the Canadian North or any other or the northern parts of the United States, they may have to have a battery heater or something like that. Their charge may not last as long in the cold. That's a possibility as well.
That's probable. Yeah.
The charge. Those are the things. The batteries will probably be all right. It's just a matter of what performance.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. 60 press freedom groups call for the EU action against Israel over unprecedented media freedom violations.
Yeah, Israel's out of control. In order to pursue the massacres that are going on in Gaza right now, they have limited press freedom They have shut off all international press from the Gaza. You sneak in maybe, but that's about it. And once they identify a troublesome journalist, they kill them, or they arrest them and torture them. There's all kinds of actions against journalists, and the limitation of journalists to go into that to the Gaza. They shut down Al Jazeera. They won't let Al Jazeera because Al Jazeera takes the point of view from the population rather than from the government. So they got rid of Al Jazeera. Censorship is big time. Now we expect a certain amount of censorship from any government that's pursuing a war. We saw that with the Western countries when they went into Afghanistan and when they went into Iraq. No journalist was allowed to get out on their own. They have to go with the army, and that's what the Israelis have done. The few times a journalist has gone into Gaza, they take them and they show them what they want to show them, and then they come back. So free journalism is not done, and unfortunately, it appears as if, and I don't doubt it, it appears as if the Israeli government is targeting journalists. I think there's 120 of them killed in Gaza already. Some from Lebanon, a couple even from Israel. So there's a whole lot of journalists.
I'm actually surprised with all of this that you have that, particularly Al Jazeera hasn't set up a kind of, what we call a citizen kind of hand over the film, tell the story type thing. Put them up on. Load them up onto a website, not send their journalists in, so they can get the stories out from a local source, and hide who that source is.
They have done, and others have as well. You've had a couple of news teams from that are sponsored by British or whatever news agencies. I think the ICE. I forget what one it is, but. So a couple are in there, but you're going to have people that know Arabic so they can talk to the people. And when you upload a video, you have to be able to determine its authenticity, because the Israelis are no longer, at the very beginning of the war said, all these are staged. Everything here is staged. All this is staged. So when you see all these ambulances coming into the hospital, they say that's all staged. That kid's not really hurt and all that kind of thing. How do we know this isn't staged? Well, they stopped doing that because it was ridiculous. I mean, they killed 40,000 people and maimed 100,000 others and destroyed 70% of the infrastructure.
The population of Gaza was something like 20 million before all this started. What's the population now?
2.3 million. 2.3 million was
2.3 million. Okay, I thought it was bigger than that. Okay. But what's the population now? 40,000. There's so many of those. They basically destroyed the land. Are people making their homes back up again? Right? Because I'm sure the Israelis are just turning around and destroying them again.
Well, that's the number one purpose. That's the second purpose. First purpose is to kill as many people as they can. And the second, well, of course, they're supposed to be going after Hamas, but they use any excuse to drop a bomb anywhere. If they have the remotest suspicion that a journalist is somewhere, they could say, well, he's a Hamas agent. We'll drop a bomb on him. We'll kill his family too. Well, it can't be helped, really. He's in what they're doing there is horrible. And I said this before, the West will never be forgiven for this. And the Western, the worldwide press wants to get in there, wants to get into Gaza. And there's a big reason why the Israelis are not letting them in. And I doubt if they're going to let them in, even if they have a ceasefire. Everything is appalling there, and so the world press has said you should put some sort of sanctions on Israel, some sort of punishment for doing this, for limiting free press, and for interrupting and killing and arresting journalists. They arrest journalists and torture them, they said here. this is from you know what I mean? So, and we reported on the show a few months ago that 50 of the news agencies around the world, mostly Western Europe, complained that Israel was censoring the news coming out of Gaza, and they wanted entry into it, like democratic countries are normally allowed to report the news as they see it. Well, that's not happening in Gaza right now, and there's been a big complaint. Of course, Israel has total immunity because there's nothing they can't do without the United States vetoing. How many vetoes have been on the UN right now for major or minor restrictions on Israeli behavior? One nation keeps vetoing all this. All the other nations are now on board. There was a time when there might be one or two others, but every nation now is demanding that something happen here, and who keeps who keeps videoing it? The United States. At the same time, on the other side of their mouth, they're saying, "Oh, we need a peace deal." Here, so what they're doing is going here now. Here's $20 billion worth of bombs, but we don't want you to use them.
Okay, and just to be clear about these journalists, Al Jazeera is saying 120 Palestinian journalists have been killed, 3 Lebanese and 2 Israeli journalists. And they're not saying that they are Al Jazeera journalists. These are just journalists, full stop.
Well, yes, a lot of them are independent journalists, so they'd be freelance. Yeah. Some of them would have been the normal journalists that you normally would have in a society, reporting on, they like our journalists do. They might report on a sewer breakup, or they might report on a school being built, or something as benign as that.
Oh, yeah. But all of those are important, pieces of news for the local community, aren't they?
Well, when the war started, just about everybody became a war journalist, didn't they? So whatever specialty they were, whether it's local news or city council type news or whatever, suddenly they're all war journalists because the place is being totally ruined.
Well, and actually, even city council news becomes, the city council met in a half destroyed council chamber, doesn't it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's a complete disaster. There is, and to tell you the truth, the Israelis are losing more men than they say they are. They went into northern Gaza and said, okay, it was free of terrorists. Now we'll move south. Well, the Hamas shows back up in the north, and it shows back up in Khan Yunis and attacks their forces. They're not going to get rid of Hamas. They can't. They're too entrenched. As much as you might think that Hamas is vile. As a matter of fact, I saw a video the other day where they're brand new fighters, brand new 2024 recruits to Hamas, and they're all young men. So what would you do if you're a young person growing up, 20, 24, 25 years old? All you've known is this unusual sort of detention camp called Gaza, and now the Israelis are bombing the crap out of you. You killed families and friends, and what would you do?
I would understand why they would. I could understand exactly why they would do that. Yeah,
of course. All they're doing, every bomb dropped is another seed for a group of new terrorists, if you want to call them terrorists, but not insurgents, basically.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. The question about debate of there being a Harris-Trump debate is entirely uncertain. It's weird, actually, because one of the things I remember pointing at in Britain about how I would like to see things change would be what I consider the debates that they did in America, the presidential debates they did in America, such a phenomenal way of actually getting two types of opposing voices out there. And it's unlikely this is going to happen. I always thought of it as actually a standard part. It was a pre-organized part of American presidential politics. Didn't realize it was actually, there's kind of has to be agreements to actually get these things going. I always thought it was actually almost put into policy. You know what I mean?
Well, the problem here is when Biden wanted to debate Trump, they had special conditions. They had to have a muted mic, and they couldn't have a third party. They couldn't have JFK or RFK. Robert Kennedy Jr. was the third candidate, and Coleman Hawkins was not Coleman. It was a Coleman. No, the black guy. I can't remember his name offhand. He was also an independent. So there was two independents plus Trump and Biden. First thing the Democrat says, no other candidate, just Trump and us, and you have to have muted mics. You have to have muted mics. So Trump agreed to this. And it was thought at the time this was going to be a disadvantage for Trump because he made much of his zingers over talking his opponent. And that was thought to be an advantage for Trump. So when they had the debate with Biden, they made sure the mics were muted. Trump agreed to this. Now that they agreed to another debate under the same conditions, but the Democrats have now decided that when you mute the mics, it makes Trump look a little bit more disciplined. It gives him a more positive look rather than a negative look. So they've reversed it and said, we want to debate. So they already agreed to a debate under the same conditions, but this time we want them unmuted. So why now change the conditions? Because apparently they think Trump will look pretty bad if he does his typical interrupt. Yes. This is going to be a real challenge for Kamala Harris because although she speaks better than Biden, she mostly speaks off a monitor. She doesn't speak. She doesn't speak well. She doesn't express herself that well without a monitor so far.
So far, right? What you don't know is actually, she hasn't been tested in that way. Is all you're saying, really?
Well, what they did with Biden, it didn't work, but they coached him for what was 8 days or something, around about a week. Biden practiced. They had mock debates over and over going, and he practiced.
Yeah.
And they made sure that Trump's mic was muted so it wouldn't confuse Biden when he's trying to answer. Now they want the opposite. They think that Trump will look undisciplined if he has an unmuted mic. Meanwhile, they already agreed to a debate under the same conditions they demanded for Biden, but now they demand that those are not. So it doesn't make the Democrats look any good here. You have the Republicans, you have Trump cooperating, okay. And the first debate, he would have rather had an unmuted mic, but okay, you want a muted mic, I'll go with muted mic. And now they have another debate, and he says, and all of a sudden, now we want an unmuted mic. So it doesn't make the Democrats look good. It makes it look like the Harris campaign is very afraid of the debate. She has not had, whereas Trump and Vance have had several interviews with the press. Harris has avoided them so far. And they keep saying that she can't make them without a teleprompter in front of her.
I think both of those press interviews and debates are an important part of running any presidential campaign. And I think it's going to blow back on Harris if she doesn't do them.
And the journalists who do the interview have to they can't keep lobbing her softballs. You know what I mean? When I saw Vance being interviewed,
absolutely.
when I saw Vance
They have
being
to be
interviewed,
hard,
I thought a couple of the questions were rather unfair, and but he kept his composure and he answered them, which disappointed me. I kind of hoped he would flub it, but he didn't. And Trump is like, he's the Teflon Don. Nothing sticks on him. Any faux pas he's ever made in an interview doesn't seem to make any difference at all. So the Harris campaign right now is are trying to analyze or trying to figure out how best to do this debate. And I don't know if they're going to change the conditions again. And also, Trump has a problem with ABC. He says he go with just about any other network, but ABC is strongly Trump opposed. Basically, it isn't a fair venue. So I don't know. It's making the Democrats look bad. It makes them look like they're afraid to come out and start talking, and that might be okay for now as the momentum keeps going. But it's going that's going to run out pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got just over 2 months to the election. She's got to be debating in that time. She's got to be doing interviews in that time, right?
That's
if she
right.
doesn't do interviews in that time, that is going to hobble our campaign. It really is. It's going to make it very difficult for her to win.
Well, they're practicing now. They have they've got people there trying to manufacturing answers to very difficult questions for her. The ones they know that Trump will be pointing out, like, why did you do the Ukraine thing? Or why did you say that you want to let more immigrants into the illegals into the states from the south, but now reverse your opinion? Those kind of things. So there's going to be some pretty hard questions, and they're going to have to find pat answers that she can stick with that sound reasonable, and that she can't be shaken off of from a Trump debate.
And remember, of course, accusations.
She's probably practicing a debate every day now.
Yeah. Remember, of course, that accusations against things that Biden don't necessarily fall upon Harris.
Yeah,
I know
she was in the White House. She's the VP. Yeah. She's the VP, and if something's gone wrong, she's got to say, well, you got to say, well, how come you didn't advise them against this or that, or what about that Afghan thing? How come it went so disastrous? What was your input on that one? That kind of thing. So she's now a surrogate president when she's there.
She's got to be blunt about her input, but again, if Biden didn't take her advice, she should point that out.
Yeah, but she's not going to, because right now they've created this situation where Biden was like nearly flawless, and he was a great person for the nation. If she starts coming and says, well, I didn't agree with Joe on this and I didn't agree with Joe on that, she sounds like a hypocrite. One of the biggest questions that's going to be hitting her is, you knew that Joe Biden's capacity, his mental capacity was failing. You saw him every day, and you did nothing. You said nothing. When Nancy Pelosi came into town and says, Joe, you got to walk away from this job, and the donor class started pulling their money away from Biden, and he did disastrously on a debate that he had prepared for. Why wasn't she there? Why didn't she say anything? Why didn't she encourage him to retire or get out of the way? Those are the questions that you knowingly worked with a president with reduced mental capabilities, and even supported his next run for the president, which obviously he couldn't handle. What's with that, Kamala? And I think also one of the things that's going to hurt her more than anything is, Kamala, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide. The uncommitted votes.
Yeah.
They don't like her
I was going to say,
involvement in
yeah,
the genocide.
she has to come out and say something regarding Gaza.
Well, she has, and it really isn't that good. She starts off, "We love Israel. We'll support Israel. We always will support Israel. We'll make sure that they're safe and all that. We'll defend them." And then after she says that, but the Gaza war has to end, and we're working really hard to end it. Yeah, they can end it tomorrow by stopping the shipments of bombs to Israel tomorrow, and they know it.
Yeah, they know it. Yeah, absolutely, they do. And there's more, even in the US. There's more, there's more calls to end this war.
Most of the United States are against what's happening in Gaza. That crosses party lines. It's and I don't know. That's going to be those few votes, that the uncommitted vote is a big deal for Kamala Harris. When you think of the very, very tight race, that could make the difference.
Yeah. And the Arab Americans are, becoming an increasingly, demanding bloc.
Well, just like Jewish or Italian or any other ethnic group that has. But my main thing here is they don't have a solution to that problem. They can't reach a peace deal. If they don't reach a peace deal, she's going to be in trouble, because it's not just the Arabs. I would not vote at all if I had those two choices right now, Trump or Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris does not convince me that she's going to stop that war at all. I think she's complicit in the whole thing. She hasn't spoken up against it ever until now.
And then the other question is the one about Ukraine.
That's another thing that's going to stick in her craw.
Right. And
that's another thing that's going to stick in her craw. Again,
I've not heard anything from Trump in regards to Ukraine that convinces me that he has a handle on it either.
Well, he has said this. He's going to say, he says he's going to just go over and talk to Putin and say, stop this, and tell Zelensky, you're not going to get any more weapons if you don't stop. He said, so the journalist that was asking him, who do you want to win? Do you want Ukraine to win this war, or do you want Russia to win this war? And he wisely says, I want the bloodshed to stop. I want people to stop dying, both Russians and Ukrainians, which is a good answer, really.
It was, and it's expected. In fact, actually, Donald Trump has been well voiced in being against war.
Yeah, it's one of his number one issues, and he can always say that he's going to be the peace president. I think he's going to win the election now, the way I see things happening right now. For a while there, I thought Harris would catch up and go past him because of the enthusiasm, but she didn't back it up with any substance so far.
Depends which poll you're looking at, though.
Well, exactly. But when Harris came on the scene and the Democrats had somebody to vote for, I thought, well, okay, now the Democrats are going to come out and vote. But I don't think the independents or the undecided find Harris too appealing. I don't. I think between the two of them, I think Trump's going to get more votes. I think the way things are looking right now at this particular juncture, I thought Harris had the advantage last week and 2 weeks ago, but I think that's changed. I think the momentum's got swung back over to Trump.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. All right. All right.
Yeah, okay, it's going to be a squeaker.
Yeah, I'm not predicting it right now. I really am not. Not either way.
Oh, we know it's going to be a tight one.
It's going to be very tight. Yeah, absolutely very tight. The way I feel right now. Okay, so I think that kind of brings us to an end of where we need to be on Talking Niagara right now. Any final thoughts?
Peace. Peace. Let's stop that BS in Gaza. It's just terrible. And I don't understand why the West is letting this happen. We will never be forgiven for it. And I'll say that every day here. That has to stop. That is one of the great injustices of this world. We are supposed to be democracies. This shouldn't happen in a democracy. We're supposed to be the good guys. We're not. We're giving bombs to a guy that's gone off his lid, and he wants to expand Israeli territory. You hear what they're talking about now? They're going to charge the Palestinians. They're going to extract from the Palestinians a fee for the war, and that fee is going to be land. So they're going to take a chunk of Gaza as a means of paying them back for the war, as a punishment for the war. You see what's happening here. They're still trying to expel all the people out of there, and they're working pretty hard to do that on the West Bank too. We need peace. We need Israel to act like a democracy. In any case, and we need the United States to quit being pulled around by the nose by Netanyahu. Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Please pray for peace. It's long overdue.
Yeah, absolutely.